Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's video is part of a video hop. So there is a giveaway. We'll talk about that in just a minute. I am using the Paradise Plumerias. This is one of my sets that is from the Sunkissed summer release that we are celebrating. And I'm going to be really, I told you guys, I think, last week, I think it was last week, yeah, when the release went live, that I had planned on doing a video with these. So here it finally is. I am using Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock, and I am stamping. There's 3 images. There's like a branch, there's a single. Well, I think there's more than 3. Is there more than 3? Guys, I can't even remember. There is more than 3. I think there's an extra, yeah, there's a side view and a leaf I didn't use. But I used the cluster, the branch, and then the single one with 2 leaves. And I'm going to color them up the same way. Here is the really, really great thing about these types of flowers is they come in all kinds of colors. So you can pretty much color them whatever you want and it would be accurate. But you guys know me, if you know that I go on the Google and I like to look at photos of them and try to pick some colors. So this one, what is it called? I can't remember. Is it like, it's like strawberry lemonade or fizzy lemonade or something? They've all have like these fun, like the variations of colors have all these like fun names. One of them's fruit punch. That's more like a corally color. But anyway, they're going to be pink and yellow. And so we'll talk about that because they're pink and yellow in a different way than like a rose we did recently where we were blending the colors. These ones have yellow centers and pink kind of tips. So let's talk about the leaves. I apologize for not showing you the colors. I used a G29, a G19, and a G17. If you remember from the video that we did with the Palm Beach cover plate over the weekend, I actually had intended on using these flowers with that, the one we ended up making into a postcard, and it just covered up too much of the scene and I couldn't bear to do it. And so, because I had shown these colors in the section where I was coloring the cover plate, I didn't have any footage of them here. Something to note here, and this happens, I drew this and this even happens to me, so don't feel bad if it happens to you. I was going through and I was laying down the darkest color for my leaves and I actually ended up getting one of my petals. So I went in with some colorless blender and tried to remove as much of it as I could. This also helped kind of pick what color combination I was going to use because I wanted to make sure I was going to use something that would either completely cover up that green or would blend it out. And that's how we ended up with the yellow centers. So pretty much for the leaves, they're just going to be shading straight down the middle and then along each of these lines. I do a little bit of shading, of course, anytime they're tucked underneath something, tucked underneath the flower, that flower is going to cast a shadow and there's going to be shading there, or where it's meeting something. Even if it's not tucked behind, if it's meeting like its stem, it's going to be a little bit darker there. And I'm going to be honest with you, because these particular flowers were meant for a different card, a lot of the coloring that you're going to see is on this branch, and I didn't even end up using the branch on the card that you're going to see today. But all of the flowers are colored the same, and they are very similar. So hopefully you'll still be able to learn from the little coloring tutorial portion. Let's talk about the giveaways. So this is part of the video hop. It is linked below so that you can hop along. Make sure you're leaving comments as you go, subscribing, so that you can be entered into the giveaway. Honeybee is very generously doing 2 $50 gift cards, and they will draw those winners on June 14th. So you have until then to get through the whole hop and leave your comments as you go. So I originally picked a kind of more of a true green, and I wanted it to be a little bit more blue green. And so I'm going in with a B04 and just kind of going over the lightest areas. And this is going to push it just a little bit further on the blue side. A B04 is a mid-tone. So if these were lighter greens, like if this was like the YG family, like a YG 01, 03, a B04 would be a little bit strong, but because we're out in the 7s and 9s, it's not too strong. Here, what I'm showing you is on some of the side view flowers, there are two petals or leaves. You can color them either way. And I think with the stencil, because this does have a stencil, but the stencil's not available yet. There was a hang up with the manufacturing. But with the stencil, I think they actually just did one of them a leaf, which is fine. You can make them any which way you want. In the card that I did with the anchors and the seashell, I colored them all as petals. And as this one, I colored those two as leaves. So here is where I'm first experimenting with how I'm going to get this color combination of this kind of, I do think it's a strawberry lemonade, but I will double check that. And so I'm using a Y08, a Y02, and a Y00. And I'm keeping that tucked pretty tightly into the center because the pink is just on the edges, but there's like this white space in between them. Like the yellow and the pink don't meet. So for my darkest pink color, I am using an RV04, and I'm taking that around the tips. And then the way that plumerias look, they're kind of rolled on one side. They look like pinwheels. And that part that rolls over is going to catch a lot more light. So for the RV04, I did bring it on just on the inside of that line. For the actual highlighted part, the part that is up, like tipped up and over, I used the RV02 for coloring that section. Because even though they're tipped up and over, they are still the same colors. So then the last color was an RV00, and that blended it out and left a little bit of white space. So the reason that I colored this flower instead of the other ones first is because it's always easier to learn, like when you're trying it out for the first time, on a wide open, larger flower. So now that I know what I need to do, to get a look that I'm going to be happy with that's accurate, now I can go in and do some of these smaller flowers, the ones that are kind of bent at more interesting angles, and I know that I'm going to be able to get a look that I'm happy with, but everything is still the same. So it's a Y08 in the darkest part in the center. Blend that out. You're going to go over the Y08 with the Y02, and then over the whole thing that you've just colored with a Y00, leaving that kind of white gap. And then from the edges in, it's an RV04. You're going to go over that and slightly extend it with an RV02, and then blend it out with an RV00. So I think they're really cute. I was happy with the way that they came out. This card, and you guys know me, I am very transparent. I have talked about this before, like when it comes to design, there are certain types of styles that I really enjoy and really think are beautiful when other people create with them, like a very layered look. And if you are, if you're going along the hop, you haven't gotten to it yet. But Dawn Woolsagel, who's like one of my closest friends, she did a more clean and layered. She's on this hop as well, so make sure you stop by and give her some love. But she did a more kind of built up layered look, and she's great at it, and it's so good. Or when she does vintage, it's like just stunning and beautiful. But those are styles that I struggle with. So this one with this tone on tone background, I have another crafty friend who has a tendency to make all of her cards really monochromatic. Her name is Emily Midget. You've probably heard me talk about her before. And she's super talented, but she tends to stick to like a very monochromatic feel on all of her cards. And I think it's beautiful. So I was like, ooh, that would be fun to kind of give that a try. Now, I do think that the card was successful in achieving that tone on tone look, but it was a challenge for me to get there because it's not my go-to. And so the reason that I bring this up and talk about this, back to the card. So now all the coloring is done. We're going to cut these out with their coordinating dies. And then we're going to start working on the background, because remember, this was supposed to go with the other one. And then I just kind of set them aside. So anyway, the reason that the monochromatic is such a struggle is because I love colors and I love contrast. And so sometimes the monochromatic can be very challenging. But the reason that I bring this up is because when we hit those things that are challenging, those are like the growing pains. And that's typically where you're going to learn a lot more than you would by doing something that you've always done. So for the background here, I wanted to create kind of a bluish green background, and I love the look that watercolor gives, but sometimes I don't have the time to do the watercolor look. So I'm going to supplement with some Distress ink smushing. One of the things to note, so I've put all the colors down, I've sprayed them, but then if you saw, I sprayed my watercolor paper as well and kind of rubbed my finger around to spread out the water. And that's just going to give me a softer application when I dip my paper in, so that everything is really going to move with the water, because the surface of both areas are wet. If I would have just dipped it in dry, I would have gotten a lot more texture. So this time around, I am dipping them in, and I'm using a little bit less water on both of them. So I did spritz my dry background, but just a little bit. And the same thing with the ink that I have on my desktop. As you can see here, I had lots of watercolor paper that I needed to use up, and I wasn't going to waste all of that ink, but we're only going to be using the piece that's all the way on the left-hand side. In order to add some shine and interest, because literally I'm helpless not to, we are going to spatter on first some clean water. These backgrounds are all dry, by the way, so that clean water is going to bleach out some spots. And then we are also going to add some spots of Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl and in the gold. So these are just going to add a little bit of shine and a little bit of interest to the background that we're going to be using. So when we push ourselves to do something different, did that mean that this card took me a lot longer to make? Yes, it did. And I kept going back and playing around with things, but it pushed me to do something different. And so that's only going to be a skill that I will be able to use multiple times. So this is the Palm Frond cover plate. This is not part of this release, and this is not new at all. I've used this multiple times, but it is an excellent, excellent cover plate. It's just really good for like summer cards. And I thought they would look really pretty with the plumerias. So I took my watercolor background, I die cut this cover plate. I'm going to go through and do all of the little pokey bits. And I wanted the monochromatic, but I still wanted some contrast. And so one of the things that I'm going to do to help make this more dimensional is I'm going to add a shadow. So this is that same G29 that we used for the leaves, but all I'm doing is running it kind of along the side of the cardstock. And you just want to pick the same, like whatever it is, just pick the same side. So I do it as if my light source is in the top right-hand corner, so then all of my shadows are to the bottom left. It doesn't matter which side you pick, just whatever you pick, just stay with it the whole time. And you're going to see as we go through here, I'm not going to make you watch the the whole thing, because it does take a second. Not too long. You would think it would take a really long time, but it actually doesn't. But you can see already, even just with the glass mat behind it, like it's really starting to give it a little bit more depth. And so when the whole thing is done, it has a lot more dimension. Here it is on white. This was a little bit too stark, and I wanted, again, I still wanted to incorporate neutrals, but I wanted that monochromatic look. So I chose to use it with the, all right, and I got to look it up how to say it. Nope. What is it? No, guys, I don't got it. It's a Hero Arts color. It'll be linked below. It's not Adirondack. That's not right. But that's what I keep thinking in my head. And that is wrong. Adriatic? Maybe that's right. I don't know. It'll be linked below. It's a beautiful dark like teal color. So I also cut out one of this is while I was playing around. I had so much footage for this. I cut out the vintage layering die. And then in order to blend them in, you guys know that I don't love the white die cuts, the white edges on my die cuts. I used a BG49. So I tried this one, the vintage layering frames, first, and it was just a little bit too busy, but I really liked the white edge, and I wanted to use that to hide some foam tape so I could get some dimension. So I just used my trimmer to cut out that middle frame, and now I have a frame that has detail impressed in it, so it's not just white, and I will be able to use that. And then because, again, we have a lot going on with this monochromatic kind of look, I wanted to pop it up so it would give that palm frond some more dimension. But you could cut multiples of them and stack them, but your girl wasn't doing that. So for the sentiment, I chose to use that same color cardstock, and I treated it with my anti-static tool, and I am stamping it in our Brilliant White pigment ink, and then embossing it with white detail embossing powder, and then I will cut it out with its coordinating die. So anyway, this is a very long-winded way to say, if you're struggling with a card or with a technique or a design, don't give up on yourself. Like, maybe take a break, maybe come back to it. This card took me a couple of days to make. And normally I am like, Dawn teases me all the time because she'll be like, girl, you like come up with a plan, execute it, and you're done. Like, that's not how card making is for her. But if you're somebody who is like me, who's used to being able to do that, and then it takes 2 or 3 days for a card to come together, that's where we're going to grow, and that's where we're going to learn. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. So just stick with it and don't give up on yourself. You can do it. So here I have glued the frame to the cover plate, and then Honeybee has these really great, what are they called? They're just foam strips, white foam strips, and they're 1/4 of an inch wide, but they're only like 1/32 of an inch tall. So they're very low profile, which is nice for a little bit of lift, but nothing too crazy. And they're awesome to make like anything that you need to put a frame around, because a lot of times, like when we're matting or whatever, we use that 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just running this around. I'm not putting anything in the center. I'm actually not gluing down the center at all, because I know I'm going to put my flowers in the center, and it will help hold down that palm frond. And having them kind of loose in there helps to give it more texture and more movement. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these. These are very sticky. So I am going to give myself a little bit of a buffer by putting some liquid adhesive on them, just in case I have to pick it back up. That liquid adhesive is kind of like a little savior, because it doesn't immediately adhere. Whereas if you just went in straight with the foam tape, it will adhere almost immediately, and it will adhere immediately, not almost, and you will not be able to pick it back up without tearing your paper. So here, that is it mounted. I do have some regrets about about the color scheme, I guess, not the monochromatic part, because I really love this background. And I think with the shadow, it gives it a lot of dimension. I wish I would have used different colors for my flowers, not because they're not pretty. I do think they're pretty, but I think that this card would have benefited from a different color. I think they would have benefited from like an orange, which is a natural complement to a teal. And then I also wish that I had stamped my sentiment in a teal on a white piece of cardstock, because I think that would have tied it in better. Maybe done some white splatters in the background. But all in all, I mean, pretty happy with it. I just like to be, somebody had made a comment, which was very sweet and very kind, in another video where I was talking about this, and they're like, don't be so down on yourself. I'm not down on myself. I'm not unhappy with the card. I'm just giving you my Monday morning quarterback in retrospect, what I would have done differently or what I will do differently when I make something in the future. So all the flowers were popped up. The sentiment was popped up. And then in one of the newer gems, this is, I believe, the Americana gem stickers. They have a white, and I'm going to use that to accent my sentiment. I did add some clear glitter to my flowers. Of course I did. And then accented I think the white, that part does balance pretty nicely. And then once these go on, that's pretty much it. That's the whole card. We didn't do anything else to it. So give something new a try. Maybe for you it's a monochromatic background, maybe it's a different style. But don't be afraid of those growing pains. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and don't forget to hop along to the next video. I will catch you on the next one. Bye.